Hey guys, it's JP back for another video. Today we're exploring French Polynesia, so sit back and enjoy the ride with us. First stop today was Bora Bora, and we disembarked off of our cruise ship. Now in Bora Bora, we were actually hoping to get a glimpse of those floating bungalows that you see so typical of this region. Unfortunately, the bungalows were unavailable. There is an option to try to get a day pass for these areas. They cost about 100 to 200 bucks depending on the hotel, but they are booked well in advance, and unfortunately we weren't able to get a day pass at the time when we arrived. So we just spent the day at the beach. We went to Matira Beach. Beautiful beach, as you can see. The water extremely clear. You're basically swimming with wildlife here. You could see a skate in the distance here. You could see the small floating fish. We truly enjoyed our time here. The water was crystal clear, like I had mentioned. There are a lot of atolls. You could see here the skates. They were swimming right along the coastline trying to eat the fish. And at first you're a little bit hesitant. You see here my wife touching them. They have kind of a slippery texture to them. Here they're chasing me around with the camera, and my son also got in on the action here. So it was generally an enjoyable day. The weather was perfect. It was probably a good 78 to 80 degrees, and the water was about the same temperature as it was outside. So it was really a beautiful day. The only criticism I might have for this area was probably that there was a bunch of coral that was sometimes along the coast, so it would be a little difficult to get into the water. But once you were in and you were in an area where there weren't too many corals, it was just a gorgeous place to be. This video, we're also going to be talking about cost of this trip. This was part of our 2-week cruise. The cruise first embarked in Honolulu, and we spent some time in Hawaii, and now we made our way down to French Polynesia. The first stop was Bora Bora. The second stop here is Raiatea, which is another island in the region. In Raiatea, we basically just took a hike. We decided that we wanted to save our touring dollars for other locations, and so we got the advice of one of the locals there to take a hike that was pretty close to the cruise ship port. It was about an hour walk, and this was kind of the walk that we did here. It was through this dirt road. We made our way up this mountain, and it was a bit of a trek. You could see here that we are starting to feel the effects of exhaustion here. The day was slightly warm, but we're all in good spirits. Finally, we made it to the top, and we saw this amazing view of the islands, the water, the just breathtaking views all around in terms of this 360-degree panorama. I was just so floored by how pretty everything was. It was a perfect day, perfect weather, and perfect day for a hike. We made our way back, and you could see that the views all around were still very nice all the way down to the ship. We got back to the ship, and our next destination here was Moorea, another beautiful island in French Polynesia. We were greeted by these Polynesian dancers. Moorea has a lot of cultural significance and is just one of the more beautiful islands in this chain of islands. There were a lot of tour guides at the port waiting for us, but we decided to just take a shuttle that drove us over to one of the closer beaches by this area. Again, another beautiful place. You could see here the rocks along the coastline where coral would grow, and it made for a little bit of a journey. I wasn't too happy with all of the rocks in this location, but you could find spots here. We found a nice spot where there weren't too many coral along the coast. Beautiful, stunning weather again, just picturesque. Everything looked so picture perfect. You could put that on a screensaver and just be happy with it. We kept making our way down the coast and we found this shaded area. There was a little island that was across the way, but again, there were way too many coral in that area that we couldn't really make it over there by swimming. So we just took in the sights, we just relaxed by the shore and really just appreciated the nature that was all around us. There were people there with kayaks that were able to go across that area of coral, and it made it easier for them to make it. So if that's something that interests you, obviously you can always kayak in this region. I will also mention that French Polynesia is part of France, so while this isn't specifically cited as being a nude beach, there were people there that were topless, so just be warned. Moorea was a beautiful place, but our next and final destination here in French Polynesia was Tahiti. And Tahiti was a bigger island than the other three that we had visited, and it's much more industrial. You could see that there are a lot more houses and a very well developed port, so there was more to do here if you're into the city vibes. Here we decided to take a tour just because it was our final stop in this area. We stopped at the Papite market, and in this location you can see that a lot of people, not just tourists but also locals, come here to get their foods and their supplies. Lots of tourist stuff around here for souvenirs, if that's something that interests you. It was a busy weekend, so more people than usual. You can see all of the local cuisines in this area, which you can buy. The currency in French Polynesia is the French Polynesian franc, so you can use that currency, or a lot of these areas also take US dollars, so you don't necessarily have to do a conversion, but it might be something you want to do just so that you can get the most out of your dollar. The tour stopped at this garden initially, and it was a pretty garden. You can see here a waterfall that greeted us. The garden itself was just a nice place to visit. I wouldn't say it was close to being remotely memorable, but it was a nice garden nonetheless. We just strolled through this area, and really just a nice place to visit, very tranquil, very peaceful. We only had 15 minutes at this stop. This is part of the reason why we don't like doing tours so much, is it's that you are basically on a time schedule. So we had 15 minutes at this location and another 15 in the other locations that we were to visit. And so you didn't really have a lot of time to appreciate it, but quite honestly, I don't think you necessarily have to use all of that time at some of these spots, because for the most part, you walk through and you see everything that you typically would see. So I wouldn't suggest it's a problem, but there is a lot of driving that's involved with these tours. This tour, for example, toured the entire island, the North Island of Tahiti, so it was quite a lot of driving, and if you're traveling with children, this could be a problem. The next stop on this tour was this black sand beach, and it was a different type of beach. The sands in Tahiti are significantly different from the sands you would see in Bora Bora, for example, just because the sand here is derived from volcano rock. As this volcanic rock breaks down into the sand, it retains its dark color. In Bora Bora, what happens is that most of the sand is actually derived from the coral, and so the coral retains its natural sandy brownish color. So quite different, very different experience, still amazing. Next, we went to this cave that's apparently quite popular in that region. Natural beauty all around again, but nothing really all that memorable, quite honestly. This was the third stop on our tour, and we spent about 10 minutes in this location. Again, that's generally speaking the criticism I have of these tours is that they're fairly short and that they are a lot of driving. The next stop on this tour was this waterfall, one of the taller waterfalls in the region, a major attraction, and most tours do stop at this spot just because it is quite beautiful in this area. We were able to see a lot during this time in Tahiti, considering we only had the one day, but again, we spent the majority of the time in a bus driving from place to place. The good thing about the tour was that it did pick us up from the cruise port and it did drop us off at our hotel, and so we didn't have to lug around our luggage, which was a very, very welcome bonus, because walking around with 20 pounds on your back is not really an easy thing to do, particularly if you're walking for a good half a mile to a mile. But this waterfall was quite visually appealing, very, very beautiful. Again, you can put this on a screensaver and just imagine yourself in a different place. It's quite stunning. You can actually take a swim in the little pond at the base of this waterfall. And the cool thing about this is that there are no snakes in Tahiti. That's one of those interesting facts. There are actually 0 snakes in Tahiti. So that's pretty cool. And one of the major things about Tahiti, they are also known for their pearls. So you're going to see a lot of vendors in the area that are selling pearls. The last stop on our tour here was Venus Point, and it's another black sand beach. While I have you here, let me just go over the cost of this trip. So this was part of our cruise, and the total cost of the cruise was actually double that of what's listed at $5,600, but I split it up since half of the cruise was in Hawaii and half of the cruise was in French Polynesia. The lodging, we spent over $200 on a hotel for one night, and that was because basically we had to stay the night before we were to fly out to New Zealand. For transportation, we spent $93 on just taxis getting around the island and getting to the airport. For food, we spent $0. Again, we basically stuck with our budget and stayed at the cruise ship for food, and we spent over $150 on tours, giving the grand total to be $3,330 and a per day average of $416. I felt this was a pretty good price considering we are a family of 3. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please like and subscribe. See you in New Zealand. Thanks.